Tell me which one? This one? Yeah. Okay. Off. There's no one online. We can start. It's one. Right. Good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to have there's a bit of an echo here. I'm just wondering if the team, yeah. Right. So it's online as well. There's people on the Zoom, so we have to use the mic for that reason, although it's a small room. So that's that. My name is Isabelle Baltenbeck. I'm an economist at ILRI, International Livestock Research Institute, and I'm just here to facilitate a bit this session. We have 5 very exciting presentations today. 5 back-to-back after lunch can be a bit difficult to manage. But please stay with us. So what we're going to do is we're going to enforce a very strict 15 minutes, 1-5, per presentation. And after each of them, if there's any questions for clarification, we will take them, very few, just to make sure that there's no misunderstanding, not a deep conversation, because we want to have enough time at the end of the session for a more thorough, interesting conversation, looking at really at the enablers for smallholder farmers to access markets, both input and output markets. Is that okay? So please stay alert. If you have questions, put them on your notepad so that you don't forget them. And let's get started. So the first one is Dr. Dinesh Kumar on unlocking the potential of local value chain for global impact. Please come forward. And I'm going to put the 15 minutes thing. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for a wonderful introduction. Yeah, so very good afternoon to all of you. And I would like to thank CG for providing us an opportunity to give us a slot and the side event where all of us can discuss on very important topic today. And also, I would like to thank all of you to take out time and make it to this conference room to attend our session. So I would like to thank all of you on behalf of all the panelists and speakers today who have joined me to make the presentation on the wonderful work which they have been doing. So today's topic, I am Dr. Dinesh Kumar Chauhan, and I represent ICRISAT. And as you all know, ICRISAT is an international organization working around semi-arid topics. I take care of agribusiness and innovation platform at ICRISAT, headquartered in Hyderabad. So I would, before coming to the topic, I would like to briefly explain what are the verticals and things which we do at Agribusiness and Innovation Platform. To begin with, Agribusiness and Innovation Platform is we are fortunate it is the first agribusiness incubator in India, right? We were created some 20 years back, and ICRISAT was founded some 54 years back, headquartered in Hyderabad in India. So we typically Agribusiness and Innovation Platform. The vision is to enhance agriculture development in dryland tropics through entrepreneurship, innovation, and partnerships. We have the mission to create, leverage, and aggregate programs and services, entrepreneurship development, innovation, and value addition, promotion of agribusinesses for accelerated agriculture growth in the drylands. Agribusiness Innovation Platform consists of 4 verticals, and which is Agribusiness Incubator. Then we have another program, Innovation and Partnership Program. Then the third one is NutriPlus Knowledge Program. And the fourth one is Intellectual Property Facilitation Cell. Typically under Agribusiness Incubator, we work around technology development, funding, consultancy, and mentoring and entrepreneurship support. Till now, we have incubated almost more than 125 plus startups based in India. And then we have innovation and partnership program, where the role is to have a strategic partnership for value chain development. We'll discussing more around this program. Co-creational institutional innovation models, collaborative research, and rural development. Under Nutri Plus Knowledge Program, which is again a unique program under AIP, we do a lot of work around product development and then validation and promoting entrepreneurship, also training and capacity building. Under IPFC cell is focusing largely around IP protection, IP advisory, and providing support around patenting and all to all the startups who are incubated with us, right? So these are some of the initiatives which we did, and especially around Africa region, right? So we had a program with the support of Danida under handholding and mentoring for UniBrain project, and the outcome of this UniBrain project was like we created around 6 incubation centers, and more than 294 agribusiness ventures were there, and which helped in creating more than 4,000 jobs. Then the second program was establishing food processing business incubation center and food testing laboratories in almost 10 countries. And this was in the period around 2012 to 2016. And this was done through support of Department MEA, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. Then we had another program which was for departmental officials and food processing personnel from Africa. This was again supported by MEA, Government of India. Then we had another program under nutritional and nutraceutical properties of cereal and legume-based traditional foods from India and South Africa, and their role in addressing malnutrition, hidden hunger, chronic non-communicable diseases. These are some of the programs which actually link the markets and production value chains, right? So now the bigger question, why we want to we are here to discuss the potential of local value chain. So there is a dilemma between these are some of the areas where we feel there is a lot of dilemma whether to do this or to do that, right? So for example, when we talk about productivity, now whether we have to increase the productivity or we have to focus on sustainability, right? Similarly, for when we talk about food security, then whether we have to address food security or we have to see that whether we have to go to promote more and more businesses which are export oriented. Then there is another angle like subsidies. So whether we have to focus on subsidies versus agribusiness development, infrastructure investment, whether versus budgetary constraints, digital inclusion versus digital divide, climate action versus agriculture productivity, smallholder support versus large scale agribusinesses. So these are some of the questions, right? What whether to do this or to do that. So I will be discussing more how to unlock the potential of local value chain and to address the agriculture development dilemma and drive global impact. So the objective is to leverage technology and innovation for value chain efficiency, strengthening smallholder participation in value chains, developing inclusive business model for sustainable growth, value addition and agro processing for enhanced market access, strengthening public-private partnership for scaling impact, policy and regulatory support for scaling innovations. And these are some of the objectives, and the focus is to strengthen local value chains to meet the growing global demand for high quality, sustainably produced agriculture products, to examine the role of innovation, partnership, and policy in creating equitable opportunities for smallholder farmers. So how agribusiness innovation platform or at ICRISAT, how we are trying to do that. Some of the role which we have played in enabling this system is like we had an application where we supported a private sector player to establish this application Plantix app, and what this app does is like promoting smart agriculture and digital advisory services while ensuring accessibility for small and marginal farmers. So this is the role which we have played in building this. Then we have another startup like X Machine, which has been working with in integrating the innovative AI technologies and machine learning programming to solve some of the issues like better utilization of agri inputs and minimal use of agri inputs for better yield productivity. This machine can also play a very important role in performing some of the activities on in vegetable crops, and especially the crops which have where there are a lot of horticultural operation. So this machine can be utilized for that, for weeding and interculture operation, as well as for uses of application of agriculture inputs in these crops, right? So nurturing agri-tech solutions for inclusivity of farmers with limited digital literacy. So what this means is that how to create an application where small and marginal farmers who have very limited literacy around digital innovations, still they can use those kind of application. So it has to be very simple and user friendly for these small and marginal farmers. Then what we have done is like deploying next generation of autonomous agriculture machineries like X machine, then integrating AI, robotics, IoT, and precision farming technologies to enhance efficiency, reduce labor dependency, and optimize resource use. What we have seen that in case of agriculture operations, when we do, there is in countries even like in India and other parts of the world as well, during the peak season, there is a shortage of labor as well, right? And the window is very small to do those kind of operations. So if you have dependency on labor, then probably a lot of operations are missed, or it may be more expensive. So if we can use these low cost technologies, or maybe for the farmers, it can be, you have to be lesser dependent upon the availability of the labor and all those things. And you can utilize the resources in better and efficient manner. For example, the water use efficiency goes up, the agriculture input usage goes down, and it leads to the better yield with lesser usage of agri input. So these which will help in having more sustainable agriculture practices. Similarly, we played an instrumental role in developing some of the agri applications along with some of our startups, right? So strengthening smallholder participation in value chain. How we are doing that? We see that there is a role of capacity building to small and marginal farmers on good agriculture practices, post-harvest handling, and quality standards. We have to empower the farmer producer organization to aggregate, produce, negotiate better prices to access the larger markets. Also, we have to strengthen to facilitate direct linkages between the farmer producer organization and organized retailers. So when we say that we have to have a local production model, that means that we have to play an important role in connecting these growers with the local aggregators and the retailers in the market. So that is the kind of a role which we have to play. Develop inclusive business models for sustainable growth. So there is a need to develop an inclusive business model for sustainable growth. This can be done largely through public-private partnerships and in creating an enabling ecosystem. We have to set up a primary processing hubs, cleaning and grading and sorting facilities at FPO level or block level. We have been doing this kind of work at various places. Where we are professing that we have to set up the processing unit very close to the production site, so we can have a primary processing centers set up at low cost primary processing center very close to the source of production, and then probably we can move it to a district level place where we can have a bigger facility for secondary processing, and validation product can be created over there. Increase market access and value addition to small and marginal farmers. Entrepreneurial training and mentorship to foster rural innovation for rural youth. So we have to also work around training the rural youth around entrepreneurial skill sets, right? Because what we have seen and observed that farmers typically are not entrepreneurs, right? So we need to educate them the role of entrepreneurship, and they have to practice this. They have to have some sense of entrepreneurship. So for that we need to have a lot of capacity building around these kind of training programs, so that they are able to understand that agriculture is not only for self sufficiency, but it is also for it has to be treated as a business, right? So probably they have to have that entrepreneurial skill sets. Then value addition and agro processing for enhanced market access. So establishing primary processing units, as I mentioned to you earlier, for cleaning, grading, and packaging. We have to develop a value added products for improved access to markets. Developing regional brands to position local products in premium global markets. So so once you bring in the infrastructure for primary processing, and then you bring in the infrastructure for secondary processing value added products, probably what we want to say that we have to create local brands, right? So maybe which can be very specific for that region, and probably we have to encourage farmers to grow and value add those crops into value-added products, and probably build around a local brand, which can further enhance and bring the more value to whatever they are growing, right? So we are focusing, and we have done a lot of these work at the ground, where we have helped these farmer producer organization to process, do the value addition through our technology support, and then probably establish it as a as their own brand to establish themselves in the market. Then strengthening public-private partnership for scaling impact. So we have to engage with the government, private sectors, and agribusiness firms to strengthen local processing. Right. So we need to have a lot of engagement between the various stakeholders. Strengthening supply chain by improving product quality and enabling access to market. So we have to work around strengthening the supply chain to improve the produce quality and enable the access to the market. Conduct capacity building programs on business management, financial literacy, and market readiness. So, apart from doing the work around the value addition and product development and strengthening the supply chain, there's another area which needs a lot of work to be done at the farmer level, which is probably to make them financially literate and have to have the understanding of market readiness and business management. Because when we talk about entrepreneurship, probably they have to know how a business is being run. If you see, as per our experience, when we worked very closely with farmer producer organization at various places, what we found that the biggest problem was they were not able to understand the nuances of how a effective business is being run. What are the how to manage a profit P&L account, how to do the accountings, and all those things, right? So probably those education is also to be provided to all these small growers and farm producer organization, so they can efficiently manage their businesses well. So that literacy has to go, but there is a lot of work has to go behind it. A lot of education has to go behind it. A lot of actually capacity building program has to be done around that. Then when we talk about policy and regulatory support for scaling innovations. So for example, we need to have a decentralized seed system, right? So that farmers can have a better access to seeds. Encourage women participation in agribusiness. If you all know that women participation is there in agriculture, but they have not been given the due credit, right? So we need to encourage them and we need to promote them, right? Most of the agriculture operations in rural part is actually done by women, but probably the land, for example, in country like India and other parts of the world as well, the ownership of land doesn't lies with the women of the family, right? But most of the time they are doing the businesses. So can we do something around encouraging women participation in agribusiness? So these are some of the work which we did to encourage the strengthening of local value chains. So this is one such program which we did in India, and this program was run for more than 5 years. And what we did, where we engaged with women farmers, we created a farmer producer organization. We supported them with providing the good quality seeds, and we also worked around crop diversification. And then we also set up this processing unit. We also set up the primary processing centers and then a secondary processing center for validation. And further, we help them in formulations and recipes and all those things. And then probably the impact was that more than 6,000 farmers were benefited by that. Just 1 second. Yeah, I will quickly run through it. Similarly, this is another program where the objective was to improve productivity and reduce low cost of production and enhance farmers' income. And this was done in one of the with the tribal farmers in the state of Telangana. And the impact of the project was we empowered more than 700 farmers, like females and male, 70% females, to start MSME unit, right? So this was the program which we conducted, and we enabled operations of 9 processing unit under this program. So these are some of the value-added products and programs which we conducted. Like, for example, you can clearly see that we worked closely with the farmers, and we set up grounded primary and secondary processing unit. This was again done in one of the districts in Telangana in India, where we set up these units, and these units are now we enabled them with the technology and processing and all, and then now they are being run successfully by the farmers over there. So what the how we do it is that we engage with the community in a geography. We set up the plant, we work hand in hand with them for at least 3-4 years, and then probably we move out and make those enterprises self-sustainable. So typically we work on the convergence model, where what we say at ICRI said that we are linking agriculture, nutrition, and entrepreneurship, right? Yeah, I'm just having one slide more. So these are some of the products which were developed through under our NutriPlus Knowledge program. And these are another program where we worked with the tribal community and which helped in which created a lot of impact in nutritional enhancement of the community over there. And this was done through school feeding program. So we are working a lot around the school feeding program as well. This was all about. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. I think, and the picture at the end with the yummy foods, all kept us very much engaged. Any clarification question? If any, otherwise we have the broader discussion at the end after the 5 presentations. No, everything was clear. Great pictures, very clear explanation of what EquiSite is doing in that domain. Okay, thank you very much. Let's clap again for our presenter. And the next one is Dr. James Rao from IDRI. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Isabel, and everyone. Good afternoon. My name is James Rao. I work for the International Livestock Research Institute. Sorry. That's okay. Good, thank you. Yeah, my name is James Rao. I work for the International Livestock Research Institute. Okay. Okay, I hope I'm audible enough for recording purposes. So I work under a program called People, Policies, and Institution. And I'll be talking briefly about some work we have been doing, focusing more on the input side of things, not so much on the output market, particularly looking how do you enhance farmer participation in the input and service market. We do a lot of research in livestock, which is usually not very easy for many people. A lot of the work that you get in the CG Center are more focused on crops. So we are looking at how to integrate last mile delivery of inputs and services and technologies to enable farmers to be productive enough so that they can participate later on in the output market. And much of this work is what we have been doing over the last 2 to 3 years. So our setting is trying to put in a case of bundling, particularly information service delivery and technology dissemination, so that the two are bundled together for optimization by farmers. And we all know that there's a growing demand for food, particularly animal source food. And for you to respond to that, you need to adopt appropriate technologies. And that is why you see a lot of governments or private sector people, and particularly development programs, invest a lot in trying to disseminate technologies through extension approaches. We know that extension has probably two roles. One is that it promotes technology to enable farmers to take up technologies, but it also improves the knowledge that the farmers have to optimize decision and therefore improve the efficiency with which they use the adopted technologies. But the challenge is that the traditional extension approaches are quite limited, because we know, especially in the low and middle income countries, there's less public funding for outreach. You could have personnel, but they're not facilitated to go out and reach out to farmers. And most of the extension workers are quite unmotivated. And also, the way training is done in most of the setup is this a blanket approach to training where it's a one size fits all messaging, not taking into account the peculiarity of different farmers even within the same value chain. And therefore, there is need to change or adjust the extension approaches to make them more demand-driven yeah, and to look at opportunities for embedding them in the private sector activities so that they become part of technology dissemination. And also make them more personal or more targeted, yeah, so that, we don't just offer blanket advisory that may not be, useful for many farmers all at the same time. So there is a strong case for personalized targeted advisory services, as shown here by some literature that we have looked at. So I'll talk about two cases that we have been working on, one in Nepal and one in Kenya. And in both cases, we were trying to see, is there a different way we can organize advisory services or embed them in other engagements that farmers have with private sector or last mile delivery actors. So in Nepal, we relied on an approach called village livestock promoters. These are more or less like paravets. They are trained, but they're not employed by governments. And we were working on the buffalo dairy value chain in Nepal. So we are looking at, can we empower village livestock promoters to be agripreneurs who offer advisory services, but also now embed the dissemination or delivery of technologies like feeds and things like that. So basically trying to build a business around advisory services, but combining that with dissemination of technology of appropriate inputs that remunerates them so that they don't have to wait for somebody to go and employ them just to go out and offer advisory services. And therefore, so that advisory services provides a catalyst, yeah, or a pool for the products that they could be selling. So building businesses around advisory services. So what we did, we got these guys and trained them together with the public, the Department of Veterinary Livestock. And our entry point so you need to find the entry point. Our entry point in Nepal was low fertility of buffaloes. So we tried to understand from research working with veterinary epidemiologists and all the rest to understand what is really actually causing infertility. So while they were entering into the communities, working with cooperatives on fertility, they were also looking at what other businesses can they build around that. Because a lot of fertility is not just clinical. A lot of it has got to do with how animals are fed, what do you feed them and all that. So even if there are no clinical cases, if they are not fed properly, they don't show heat and therefore, they remain infertile for long. So we worked with the government departments, trained a number of them, and we had a research design around this. So we randomized we faced the introduction. So they were onboarded in cohorts, randomly allocated into 2 cohorts. So the first cohort was trained and deployed to work with the cooperatives, to reach out to farmers, advise them, and then see how they begin to change their practices, adopting technologies, and also beginning to purchase inputs that some of these village livestock promoters were selling. And we also trained the village livestock promoters on business skills, basically entrepreneurship skills, and also technical skills. They were given refresher training on issues on managing fertility and basic clinical cases. And then they were linked now to input suppliers who could now be like their business partners to reach out to those communities. So that was the intervention. And then we piloted with 50 village livestock promoters and randomized them across 2 cohorts. And then before the beginning, we went and did a baseline survey to understand, the practices among the farmers that they would reach out to. And then we did the intervention with about half of them, the first cohort that were randomly selected. And then after they had been deployed in the community for about a year or so, we went back and did an endline survey before taking the next cohort into the incubation process. So some of the findings that we have from this study is that the farmers who were treated to the VLP support were able to So actually what happened is that the ones who were in the control group were able to reduce herd size, the buffalo herd sizes. Yeah. And then we also saw significant reduction in grazing area, particularly because these VLPs were also training farmers to adopt forages and alternative feeding practices. So they moved away from extensive systems into more intensive production process where they reduced their grazing area, turning part of that land into forage production. And there was also, as you can see, substantial increase in the number of forages grown. The typical number, not just the area, but the options that were adopted by these farmers who were supported by the village livestock promoters. And then also they reduced the share of crop residue in the feed basket. Yeah, so we're looking at, a lot of times when farmers don't have enough or proper things to feed, they resort to crop residues, which are usually not very fruitful or productive, doesn't improve production that much. So out of the advice and adoption of better forages, they were able to reduce the share of crop residues in their feed basket. And there were also significant increases in milk yield among the VLP treated farmers, especially in the high season among these farmers. And then also there were also herd health practices. They increased the vaccination, as you can see from the vaccination costs. Now, the second case we are looking at is for the dairy production in Kenya. Typically, dairy production in Kenya is characterized by very limited use of appropriate technologies, and also which leads to low productivity. And you find that farmers are usually caught up in this vicious cycle of low investment, low return. So they don't invest in their dairy animals, they get lower production, they get lower revenues, and whatever they get, very little of it is reinvested back into dairy production because it finds its ways into other household needs. And because of that, there are also other challenges associated. Mainly, you'll find farmers have adopted improved cows, but the feeding is not commensurate with the breeds that they're adopting. So, or you find farmers are just purely adopting forages and not paying attention to herd health. So there is this singular approach to adoption of technology, which compromises the complementarity that you'd realize if you adopted these technologies together that would actually deliver the synergy and higher productivity. More importantly is the limited knowledge on management practices. Even in cases where farmers have adopted technologies, for instance, forages, the knowledge on how to optimize the use of these forages is very low. You find farmers leaving forages to overgrow. By the time they're feeding, the nutrient content has really gone down, or they are not prepared or chopped properly to optimize ingestion and the benefit that these technologies would deliver. So even when farmers have adopted technologies, there is that limited knowledge on how to optimize on them. Now, so what we also found from many of the farms that we have worked in, you'll realize that about 70 to 80% of smallholder dairy farmers in Kenya are making losses. But they actually don't see this because they don't cost a lot of the inputs or that they use. For instance, a lot of times when they grow fodder on their land, they don't value that land. Yeah. Until a new venture or an opportunity comes up and they realize, okay, I want to turn this land into something else. And they now start comparing, is it worth putting real estate on this land or growing fodder? Then that's when they realize, okay, there's a much higher value for the land. A lot of services are also not costed because they are addressed through remittances. So if a veterinary health guy comes around and treats the animal, the parents will probably call the son somewhere in town to send money. And then a lot of the labor supplied is from the family. So they don't cost these things. And it's because of this that they don't realize how much losses they're making. If you factor all these, then you realize, about 70 to 80% of them are making losses. And as you can see, the proportion of farmers making losses varies significantly. Down here, you can see it varies by the herd size. Farmers in the earlier category, those with fewer animals, a large proportion of them are making losses, so herd size matters. But importantly, you can see up there, a bigger proportion of their cost is feed. close to 70, over 70% is the cost of feed. So in order to address these limitations, we wanted to move away from the conventional training approach where you bring farmers together and train them on one topic. You are training on calf rearing, and that day this farmer is just thinking how he'll be able to feed that animal at home. So we provide this blanket training approach, yet people are very varied. To move to a more personalized shared management approach where we have a dedicated extension personnel who visit a specific number of farmers and advises them on, based on their current status, on a trajectory towards profitability. So we tested this with about 7 cooperatives and randomized these DFS among extension units to understand if this approach can really make a difference in terms of outcome. And one of the things that we realized, these farmers who were treated to this dairy farmer advisory approach were able to reduce herd sizes. They were able to significantly increase their milk yield in both low and high season, but the increase was much bigger in the low season, indicating their resilience, because in the low season, a lot of farmers, if you don't have innovations that can help you manage animals, you really lose a lot of milk because you can't feed them well. But in this case, the increase was much higher in the low season when we expect much bigger reduction, simply because these farmers were able to adopt forage conservation and all that were promoted or advised, by these dairy farmer advisors to adopt these technologies. So that's what we have been able to do. We had a third case where we were looking in Tanzania, but I didn't present it here. We were looking at agripreneurship. So basically looking at how you can empower frontline extension and service delivery personnel to adopt more entrepreneurial orientation in their engagement with farmers. Thank you.
No, I'm too short. I don't know what Alan will do, but anyway. What did you do? Oh, I think it's okay. Yeah, great. Thanks so much, James, for that. I hope you're all still very much awake. Any questions for clarification? As I said earlier, for those who just came, we just take questions to clarify between the presentation, and at the end, we'll have a general discussion. So everything was clear. Looks like. Thanks, James. So next one is Alan from IFPRI. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for being here. I'm thrilled to see such a large audience, and I'm going to talk much more about what we're doing going forward. Dinesh gave us an overview of a number of different past projects. James was talking about livestock projects in specific markets that took place recently, and I'm going to talk more about what we're doing in the policy innovations, or how we're planning our value chain and market systems research in the policy innovations and better diets for nutrition science programs. So, and I want to emphasize a couple of words there. One is research, and then we are really thinking about this in a combined manner. Ruth Hill and I have collaborated on coming up with this proposition. So I just want to highlight that we've done a lot of broad value chain research in the past in the CGIAR. We've published a couple of books. This one is actually from the first phase of PIM. Some of you might remember CRPs. I think that's a 4-letter word in CGIAR, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. And so we had the innovation for inclusive value chain development, and then Erwin Bolte and I published a book at the end of the second phase of PIM on value chain and African farmers and agricultural development. And we've now kind of moved into system thinking. So this was the A4H diagram that was used for thinking about the food system. And you can see that food value chains are very important in there. If you don't have the food value chains, then everything breaks down. So we really do need to think about value chains as being important. And then that last logo on the top is from an old website we used to have called Tools for Value Chains, and maybe some of the people in the room worked on that because it was very collaborative during the first phase of again that 4-letter word PIM. So that said, there still is really not enough research on actors within the value chain. I think we know a lot about producers. We know something about consumers, but when we go in between the producers and consumers, we just don't know. We don't know enough. And I want to stress that there is a lot of stuff going on between the producers and the consumers. And one way you can see this is very simple. If you think about what's happened to the world in the last 20, 30 years, one of the key things that's happening is urbanization, okay? So when people move to urban areas, like the urban area we're in, they don't farm nearly as much as they did when they were on the farm, right? So if there were problems in value chains, we would see one of two things. Actually, we would see two things. One is we would see really high prices in urban areas for food. Okay. Why? Because there wouldn't be, the value chains aren't working. So the food isn't getting into the urban areas. Second, we would see a lot of hunger in urban areas. We look at any statistics on urban areas, we see poverty and hunger are lower in urban areas than they are in rural areas. And everybody knows we see rural urban migration. What happens? People become better off in those urban areas. Doesn't matter where we are talking about in the world, Africa, Asia, Latin America, those are empirical facts, right? On average, there are people who struggle in urban areas, of course, and there is hunger in urban areas, but there's more hunger in rural areas. So for those things to be true, it must be that value chains are transforming rapidly to make sure that there's enough food in those urban areas. But we don't understand well enough those processes to make them work better as the world continues to evolve. So just to quote Chris Barrett, abundant and colleagues, including Yo Swinen, abundant opportunities exist for fruitful research on this topic with real impact on public and private decision makers. So that's from the Journal of Economic Literature in 2022. Okay, so what are we going to do for in the next 5 years to kind of rethink the way that we're going to do value chain research? Well, I want to propose four topics that we're going to think about. One is that we need to improve market system performance, okay? So even though the markets are working, we know that there are a lot of transaction costs that take place along value chains, and there are innovative tools and we know that there's food loss and waste in specific value chains. I'm working on the nutritious food side, so we see a lot more food loss and waste with fruits and vegetables and sometimes with animal source foods, so we want to think about those. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm going to talk about each of these areas. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here. Second, we need to promote targeted value chain growth. Targeted, I'm saying because I'm thinking about the nutritious foods, but we could also think about more sustainable foods in the same line of thinking, okay? And then we need to think about the macroeconomic drivers, and I'm going to explain that in a little bit in a minute. Last, we need to do much better descriptive work. So why do we not know as much? It's pretty easy to come up with a sample of farmers, right? And most of us in the room know how to do that. You go to a list of villages or something, and then you randomly sample, and then you sample from and those people, they tend to be there. So then you can sample those farmers. And urban areas is maybe a little more tricky because people move around a little more, but that's not that, we know how to do that. But traders are all over the place, right? And sometimes Victor might be a trader today, but he's not a trader tomorrow because he decided to bring some I don't know, cassava to the market today, but he forgot tomorrow he's not going to be trading. And then maybe on Saturday, he's a trader again. So that makes it very hard to come up with a sample of traders. For example, if we want to know more about trader behavior and understand the transaction costs related to being a trader. So that's what I mean by we need to innovate on the way we're doing descriptive work. So in terms of improving market systems performance, we're thinking about 3 different types of work. One is about quality. And we know what I mean by quality could be a lot of things. It could be nutrient content. It could be appearance. It could be water content. When you think of grains, it could be size. You know, we all like to buy bigger strawberries in the United States right now because it's strawberry season. And so you want those really big ones, even though they don't taste as good as the small ones that you get out of your garden, which is what Trump wants us all to do, is garden ourselves. And then there's production attributes. I have to tell some jokes. It's after lunch, right? The production attributes, sustainability. I put sustainability in quotes because I hate the term sustainability because it means so many different things at the same time, but I'm going to use it anyway because it's a nice it's a nice summary. And so what we need to know is what methods work to improve the money that farmers make and other value chain actors make for better quality products. To give it a biofortification example, if you have high iron beans, they look exactly the same as low iron beans or regular beans, if you want. So we would have to come up with a way of discriminating, if you will, between if we want farmers growing high iron beans for market, and maybe we don't, I don't know. We need to find a way to discriminate, to separate that market from the other markets. It's easier for other products, but that's a nice example that comes to mind. Second, we need to know what methods work to reduce food loss and waste in value chains, particularly for perishable products. The people who talk about food loss and waste a lot, I've been listening to this since I don't know what year. They talk. We need to do instead. We need methods to reduce that work to reduce food loss and waste. So we need to test some things and figure out what works and what doesn't work. And third, we need to know what methods actually work to improve food safety in value chains. So here I'm talking about aflatoxin reduction, pesticide residues, and animal source food spoilage. Those things are necessary to make value chains work better, but that's not going to be sufficient to grow them. To grow value chains, we need better finance. And we need to understand how to get finance into the hands of value chain actors. Finance could come from their own savings. It could come from the banking sector, could come from the private sector, could come from the public sector, or a combination of those areas. Okay, so what we need to do is understand that what are the best methods of making finance available to value chain actors. So processors often have access, but the traders and wholesalers, they often don't. And so how do we get them finance that they want? And particularly if we want to grow targeted markets. So what I mean by that, again, are more nutritious foods that are grown with more sustainable techniques. And we want to make sure that finance leads to inclusivity of smallholders, which if you read my book, you will see, you know, we talk a lot about how hard it is to get small farmers into these value chains. Okay. So many value chain actors, we know farmers that lack access to finance. We've written millions of papers about that. But many value chain actors also lack access to finance. This is some data from coffee and soybean value chain actors in Uganda on the left, and then food retailers in Vietnam and Ethiopia on the right from surveys that I've been involved in. We see that the value chain actors often, you know, somewhere between 30% of traders and 40% of wholesalers in coffee have access, and then only 60% of soybean traders. So these are people who say they have access to some sort of finance. Far fewer of them have loans. If we think about the percent of food retailers who have access to formal loans in Vietnam, we did a big survey. This is like 1,600 retailers of food. 5% had access to formal loans. In Ethiopia, it's even lower. We only found a handful. So we know that the access to finance is not very widespread. So that's talking about the growth. We need to figure these are problems we need to figure out if we want to see growth in these value chains. Okay. Now I promised you I'd go back and talk about the macroeconomic drivers of value chain. So there are many of these things that shape the way that the solutions that I was just talking about could come up with. A couple that we're planning to study are policies that could shift increasing demand for ultra-processed foods that we're particularly interested in better diets for nutrition. Those would be policies that kind of whack you for consuming or producing ultra processed foods. But we're also, so that's kind of easy to describe. We also want to think about international trade for more nutrient dense or sustainable foods. And on the right here is a very simple graph from the 8 of the countries that we're going to focus on in Better Diets for Nutrition. So those are the Philippines. You can't read this, but I'll read it for you quickly. The Philippines, Benin, Honduras, Vietnam, and then on the bottom is Tanzania, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Ethiopia. I want to make a very simple point with this graph. And it came out that there are 4 and 4, which is great for my simple example. Some of these countries import meat. That the left axis is the quantity per capita. So Benin is importing almost 10 kilos of meat per person, whereas Tanzania, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Ethiopia are importing 0 kilograms. That's shaping the opportunities for value chain actors in those countries. Full stop. Okay. I like, what's that? Formally, I should have said formally. Yeah, these are formal statistics, not informal statistics. That's right. I should have qualified that. You're absolutely right. Here's something I mean by improved descriptive work. This is again from some value chain surveys we did. We're comparing so we did a bunch of network-based surveys in Uganda and Bangladesh, and we're doing a few more countries late this year. And by that, we mean we're following people along their network. What I've done is compared, essentially, we then simulated what you'd get from a stacked sample where you're surveying processors and traders, but they're not at all linked. So you're kind of coming up with sampling schemes for all of those people. We think our survey got a lot more traders because we actually went and found the victors who don't sit in the market, but they come and trade every once in a while. But not the guys who are sitting in the market all the time. Those guys would be captured in the stacked sample. And what you can see is that basically 1 means they're exactly the same. So you see the bars, they're pretty close to 1 in potatoes in Bangladesh, but that's the only 1 out of these 4. And you really miss a lot of the soy, for instance, in Uganda, if you had used the stacked sample approach relative to the network-based approach. And I'm happy to answer questions about that later if you want to hear more. And that's it. So thank you for your attention. Yeah.
I was able to make the music. Thank you very much, Alan, for that. Great pictures, great thinking through the history of value chain research over the years. Again, we take only clarification questions for now. There's 2 options. Either it's all super clear, which is very nice, or you guys are you awake? Who is here? Who is here? Okay, great. A question for clarification. Okay, go ahead, Niels.
Yes, maybe along the lines that Isabel asked about the trade. Yeah. When you talked about finance, that was also restricted to formal institutions, because we do know that value chains have always had some finance. So the question would be then, how does formal finance improve? Yeah. If that is clarification.
Yeah, that is a good question. We know that informal finance exists, and we should think of that. If we need to design, what I'm essentially arguing is that we need to design better formal finance products that people will demand, so that those chains will grow, because we also know that the chains aren't growing as optimally as they could be, especially for the targeted foods that I was describing.
Great, thank you. Another question for clarification? Yes, go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. My name is Sarah Mtonyi, and I'm from Uganda, from the National Agricultural Research Organization, Uganda. My clarification, I want more clarification.
Do you mind just speak a bit closer to the mic, I think? Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
I hope you can hear me now. Yeah. My name is Sarah Mtonyi, and I'm from Uganda, from National Agricultural Research Organization. I need some more clarification on value-added products. Which value-added products did you carry out your research on, especially on coffee? Because I come from the National Coffee Research Institute. Thank you.
So we did all of the research on traders, processors, and wholesalers in local areas. So we didn't go to the coffee export firms where a lot of the value is added. I mean, I can send you the paper or the papers if you give me your card.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Alan, for answering those questions. So again, we just take clarification questions for now because we want to leave enough time at the end to discuss broader issues. So next one is Chinero. Please come forward. Thank you very much. From CIAT, right? Yes, ABC. Thank you. Alliance. It's not
Yeah.
ABC. Huh?
It's ABC. Yeah, it's a short. Yeah. Okay, I think you can hear me okay, right? Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure. Yeah, but I can get started. I'm Senior Costa Jr. I'm a scientist with the Alliance of Biodiversity and CIAT. I'm based out of Cali, Colombia. And I'm also here to talk what we are doing and what we will do around a program, an initiative called Compensation. That is a program that was launched in 2022 and have invested more than 50 million euros in attempt or to try to basically reshape how we design and implement payment for ecosystem services. And okay, thank you. Payment for ecosystem services, and this presentation may talk to the other presentations, as I'm going to focus on how all these financial mechanisms impact on farmers' income or smallholders' income at the end of or at the beginning of the value chain, right? And then, as I said, this program initiative was launched in 2022 at the Germany's G7 presidency. It's a BMZ led initiative, and it has basically three priority actions in, again, to try to establish more solid and scalable payment for ecosystem services that can benefit smallholders down the road. So one is promoting technological innovations and redesigning payments mechanism for ecosystem services. The other is strengthening public and private investment to scale financial mechanisms. And the third is to support public policy reforms with a special focus on repurposing subsidies in this case. And then compensation across this or via these three priority actions, it has 5 goals to basically, again, increase smallholders' income with payments for ecosystem services. That is income. So increase income by the services they provide, agronomically speaking, environmentally speaking. The second is with the introduction of climate-friendly interventions, so implementation of practices that can increase production and also generate environmental outcomes. That can also generate a series of co-benefits, say social, environmental, and other economic benefits that promotes diversification in production. So it's not only increase productivity, but also diversify what they do and how they do. And the fifth one is to actually mobilize more finance with all this narrative. And then what we are doing specifically in there, we are providing scientific advisory as in 2 ways: strategic research and action research. I will talk a bit more about that later. But basically what we are doing as the Alliance is try to understand how this concept is viable, or how can we make payment for ecosystem services a viable solution to increase farmers' income. So that's our role in this space, right? And then one of our first analyses to go into the direction of this feasibility was to understand what we have in the literature, what is the literature is saying to us on how a couple of financial mechanisms impacted farmers' income. So we did a thorough literature review. We evaluated, we actually tapped did tap into more in thousands of papers, but at the end we narrow it down to 90 papers more or less. And then here is one of the first results that we have around this topic. So basically what we have on the bottom here are 4 financial mechanisms. Here is how these financial mechanisms changed smallholders' income. And then you can see that PES provided it has changed farmers' income, but much lower than compared to the other financial mechanisms. Meaning that once you move to a more investment-oriented solution to smallholders, you increase the chances to increase their income compared to PES. It means that here you create a more productive and more diversified, say, farming solutions for smallholders that PES have not been able to outpace the economic or the income gains provided by these financial mechanisms. Of course, this has trade-offs, as you can see here. So this is an association or a correlation between environmental outcomes, financial outcomes, and financial mechanisms. Here on the left-hand side, you can see that PES sits here. And around PES, you have many environmental outcomes, but you have lower changes in farmer income. And again, once you move to a more market-oriented or investment-oriented type of investments, you increase the chances to increase farmers' income, but you also reduce the number of environmental outcomes associated to that. There are trade-offs. But the message here is that there is no silver bullet. There is no financial mechanism that is better than the other. But the key is how we can move from one to another and be able to do a hybridization with all these mechanisms. So you increase the chances for farmers to say, increase income in a more perennial way, in a more sustainable way. Because what happens with PES mechanisms is that once, because it relies heavily on public funding and donors funding, and then when governments and donors exit the project, these PES mechanisms also die. So if we are able to generate a system that you can move from one another and hybridize all these financial mechanisms, we increase the chances drastically to farmers to have higher income in the long run, right? So we increase the sustainability of all these projects. So as I said, we came to these initial conclusions looking at thousands of papers, but at the end, only 90 papers provided some evidence around this topic. It also means that we don't have much evidence, that we need also to collect more information at the ground level, process information, and publish, what is most importantly. But what we are doing with all these findings, we are basically supporting now several compensation-related projects globally. So you can see that compensation has projects in Latin America, Africa, and Asia. All of these projects, they are testing different financial mechanisms and trying this hybridization mode. So we are supporting each of these countries and each of these projects in their design and implementation of these PES programs. These are all projects implemented by IFAD and the World Bank globally, and they have started 1-2 years ago, and they will run for the next years. Fortunately we'll be able to test all these ideas, test all these hypotheses, and come up with new learnings for again, the design and implementation of more perennial payment for ecosystem services for smallholders. And our research in this area is supporting these pilot projects, not only with this literature review, but we also put we'll have all our hands on deck in terms of analyzing MRV of past programs, identify where compensation can gain efficiency. So working together with these projects to see how they can improve their process and increase their chances to succeed in this space. We will also be identifying project design features and innovations that can deliver compensation objectives and goals going forward, and identify new partners to improve this process, to implement these findings, and to scale PES in a more meaningful way going forward. Thank you.
Thanks so much for saving time here. Thank you very much for this focused presentation. Any questions for clarification for Shiniro? Everything was clear? So many papers screened, thousands, and getting 88 at the end. That's a lot when you do scoping review. Thank you very much. So our next speaker is Prem about from Africa Rice. Thank you very much. Yes. Hi, something food.
Good afternoon. How are we doing? Are you asleep or what? I need your attention. Arms up. Come on, I see some sleeping. Wave. Hello. If you can, kick your legs. Okay, are you awake? I need your attention because it's 20 minutes times 50 people. That's a lot of time. Okay. So I'm Prem Minraban. I work at Africa Rice. I just joined. I have worked at Erie and Summit before. I'm from the Netherlands, Wageningen University. And my last job was IFDC, a research NGO. So I want to talk to you about real food. You know, we can't eat scientific papers. Now, of course, I know we need science as a foundation, but in the end, it's all about food, right? That's what we are here for, especially on the African continent. So in the setting of local value chains having global impact, I was asked to talk about transforming the African rice sector, innovations, partnerships, and policies for sustainable and nutritious food systems. That's a mouthful, but this is actually, it captures very well what Africa Rice is doing. We have quite some challenges on this continent. I have lived in Ghana for 5 years already, working on food security issues. And Africa really needs a lot of attention and all the capacity and capabilities we have at hand. So partnership is essential to achieve impact. The consumption of rice is exploding on this continent at 6% per year. It's the second largest grain after maize. It's staple for a lot of people. Yeah, we are talking hundreds of millions. But unfortunately, about 40% of the rice consumed in Africa is imported. While this is the largest continent you can think of with an enormous potential to produce agricultural products. The import bill is 6 billion a year. Now, that's a problem, right? We need about 30 million tons more rice in the coming 10 years. So that is not a small amount. Our yields are very low and variable. For those who know the Asian system, that's the inundated rice under irrigated systems. That's about 20% of the rice in Africa. About 40% is upland, meaning it's grown like you say, let's say maize. And then we have the remaining in valley bottoms. I'll get back to that. And the yields vary in the uplands from just 1.5 tons, and in the irrigated systems up to 4 tons, which is just, let's say, between 10 to 20, 25, 30% of the potential. I have never understood why we eat white rice. So basically what we have this wonderful kernel in a chaff And underneath there's a lauron layer, it's a brownish layer, which has all the nutrients. So what do? We mill that nice layer, we give it to chicken, and the waste, which is this white rice, is what we eat. Are you kidding me? I have never understood it, I've always asked it. It may have to do with shelf life or anything, but it's really unbelievable. I'll get back to that because I have some samples here. The production costs are too high on this continent to compete, so we should do something about it. And as if all that is not enough, due to changing climate, we will also see a depression of our yield progress. So we have quite some challenges to take on. And one of the things is that the self-reliance is decreasing. As you can see, the amount of rice imported is not going down because the consumption is exploding and our production can barely keep up with this demand. Combined with a very volatile economics, very volatile international price, because only 6% of the rice produced in the world is internationally traded. So if something happens in India or China or wherever, the prices go up and down like crazy, which comes basically with a national security issue, right? This import bill is huge and it's variable. Now, luckily we have rice made in Africa. You see these flyers on your desk. So how do we call rice made in Africa? How do we call rice made in Africa? Africa rice, okay? So we have Africa rice, and we have the formal and official mandate by the governments of Africa, okay, to increase rice production through research, innovations, and by enabling their adoptions in Africa. We have a formal mandate by the continent of Africa. We are also part of the CG family, the CGIAR family. So in addition to that, we have a council of ministers. Right now we have 28 members and it's expanding. So we have this governing body, which means that it allows us, to go out and have impact. We also, because of that, have an Africa-wide NARS network with task forces like on breeding or agronomy, mechanization, etc., so that we can quickly, move our technologies into the field. And we have 6 research stations at this point in time. I'm here, so I hope we can expand the number of stations. So how do we operate? I'm not sure you can see it. I hate small letters on slides, but I copied this. We have our program. It doesn't really matter. We have genetics, sustainable production, policies, and the rice sector development. No matter how you cut the cake, it's a way of organizing yourself. Basically, like I said, we have task forces, so to reach out to our countries. And then basically what we have is like impact delivery infrastructure, whereby we bring private sector, multiple stakeholders, together to have impact, basically to work in the end on using the technologies for impact, which means that we can contribute to all the sustainable development goals and the targets of the CG system. So that is our operational mode. Again, doing research is nice, but as long as we don't get it to the field and to the farmer, to me, it's useless. Okay? Here we go. Africa's priority investment area. So what did we do? I just joined Africa Rice per 1st of February. And I looked at our portfolio, identified a couple of priority areas, a couple of blockbusters, so to speak. But they capture the entire range of activities to end up having impact. To attain rice self-sufficiency, we have this vehicle, what I call our rice policy and capacitation of our NARS. We would emphasize transformative breeding for accelerated adoption, nutritionist rice for better diets and nutrition, and massive scaling of smart valley in Africa, smart valley approaches. So let's look at this rice policy and capacitization. we pursue a value chain approach. I think it has been obvious from all the presentations here. You cannot just focus on production. You need to focus on the entire value chain. We have this network of all these NARs. They are crying out for our assistance to come and help build capacity. Those are our arms in the countries to reach out and have impact together with them. We can help to tailor policies. Like I said, we are a member country institution. We have a council of ministers. We have direct access to policymaking, not just in theory, but also in practice. So assist with policy recommendations, policy formulations, and maybe even in policy implementation. Of course, we need the scientific backing for that. But again, it is really about how do we end up having impact. So it's really a vehicle to utilize. So we create investment opportunities. One thing, in research that has always been, kind of put aside is business, because private sector is money making. They don't, they are not concerned with environmental issues or with social issues. So research for long was really a little bit like, ooh, we don't work with private sector. But how will we develop without the involvement of private sector? Everything that I wear is private sector, right? So it must be obvious that we need to look into investment opportunities. And it goes without saying that, especially on this African continent, emphasizing youth and women in agriculture is essential. So that is our vehicle, so to speak. And we are all over the continent, how to reach out and have impact. Okay, you're with me? Make sense? Okay. So what is transformative breeding? I'll put some things a little bit black and white, not to be negative or, or be provocative, but just to understand where we are. In breeding, these breeders will take a mom and a dad, and they want certain characteristics, and they end up having all these varieties. Many of these varieties, if not most, never see daylight, in the sense that they are not used by farmers, right? It just doesn't happen like that. Often only breeders know this nice variety, but it's not being adopted. So what Africa Rice will be pushing for is, apart from breeding, look into what we call post-breeding drivers for adoption. Yeah. So identifying, for instance, the characteristics that a miller wants from rice. So you take those characteristics, you feed it back into your breeding program and say, how can we consider these characteristics in our breeding? If my farmer wants to have certain characteristics, how do we plow it in our breeding and in the pipelines that we will bring out? So we will be working on designs, market studies and impact assessments. Again, we need studies. I didn't say it's bad, but we should go beyond that. Engineering, let's say, making the products themselves, the breeding, with multi-location testing. Again, the advantage of Africa Rice is that we are all over the place and we can test these varieties in multiple locations. And then, of course, the delivery tailored to product release. Scaling through our NARS network, not just in testing, but also in bringing the varieties through extension to farmers. So that's one. Breeding, right? The second is, I just indicated, I don't understand why we have this polished rice, which is a calorie dense and a nutrition poor thing, which is this rice, right? Now, Africa Rice has been working on a couple of ways to improve this quality. One is biofortification. Breeders can look at strains that have a higher zinc concentration or vitamins, etc. And through breeding, we can work on varieties that has higher concentrations. But if I have a variety that contains more zinc, then the zinc should come from somewhere, right? Because, it's a molecule, it's physical. So does the soil apply my zinc or not? So we should fortify agronomically, applying zinc, either through foliar application or to the soil, which creates synergy. And unfortunately, in our world of science, we are divided. So the breeders do breeding and the agronomists do agronomy. We bring that together to have synergistic effects on this fortification, for instance. Now, parboiling, and I wrote specifically gender. The first picture was with women. The methodology is not new or for us, but we have made it available. We have come up with technology that women groups can use it. So this is a bag with parboiled rice. It looks a bit brownish. And this is the white one. Adams, maybe you can send around this double package so you can have a look at it. Basically what it does, we take the chaff, we take the rice kernel, we put it under pressure in a pan with steam, and we steam it so that the nutrients of the aileron layer, the outer layer that contain the nutrients, migrate, you could say, into the grain. In addition, in the water that you use for steaming, we can put zinc, iron, calcium, and it also enters the grain. So we end up with rice that has a higher nutritional value. And these are, for instance, some data where you can see the improvements relative to the white rice. So I would like to encourage you all to eat from now on parboiled rice. Okay? So that is an effort to get rid of our stupidity of milling this aileron layer, giving it to our chicken, and then to eat the waste. Okay? So those are really innovations that we need to push forward in Africa. Are you still with me? Does it make sense? Now, how do we reach our 30 million tons of additional rice? You saw that the production is going up slightly. Yeah, this is my last slide or a few. Going up slowly. The production has increased primarily for more than 90% on this continent by expansion of the agricultural area, not by increasing the yield, right? So Africa Rice has these approaches and methodologies. We have decades of experience in what we call smart valleys. In over 200 valleys, we have this experience, which is to increase the rice production from 2 to 4 to 5 tons per hectare. What is a smart valley? The African continent has a lot of undulating landscapes. Now, in the valley bottom, you can grow rice. Alongside, we grow vegetables. And higher up, we go maize, legumes, etc. And it's a beautiful system, as you can see, with trees, with birds, with everything around. I can sell the system to any donor because it's nature-based, you know, it's ecological. We should, of course, take care of the ecological values, but all this comes together. It combines farmers and scientific knowledge. It is a participatory design to exploit it. The costs are relatively low because all the farmers, the communities are together involved in this. We have experience, as I said, and the rice yields go up from 2 to 4.5 tons, and the farmer incomes rate increases as well. So it has all these benefits, and it comes with a diversified diet, right? Because of all these crop systems. Now, we would like to work on massive scaling. It's a nature-based system. It is agro-biodiverse. It has a participatory development approach. It's community-owned, and I think that is critical. In my opinion, too often we focus on single farmers. But single farmers have 1 hectare, maybe 1.5. They are not interesting for the market in terms of buying stuff and in terms of selling. If you go community-wide, you are more interesting for the market. So that's what is here. It's value chain proof. It comes with high profitability, and it comes with a diverse system of crops. Last but not least, how do we reach the 30 million? We shouldn't work in 200 valleys. We should be working in 40,000, 50,000 valleys to make this happen. So if we have 10 countries, we do it in 10 years. It means 1 valley per year per country, right? This is the magnitude I am talking about. So it's not just a paper here and there. It's really about working together in these countries through our NARs to have impact. We have guidelines, we have everything ready for it. It's really about massive scaling of the system. Roughly speaking, the investments would be 9 billion, but as you know, we import for 6 billion every year. If we do this in 10 years, you will have accumulated income of about 0.6 billion a year, and your break even would be there in 6-7 years. This is the magnitude of investment we are talking about. Of course, we cannot do it alone as Africa Rice. We don't need the 9 billion. We have to do it together, but I want you to be serious about the magnitude of problems that we are facing. And we do have solutions. Eat parboiled rice, okay? Thank you.
Great. We will all try that rice once you find it in the supermarket. Yes. Thank you very much, Christian, for clarification. And then we're gonna start the general discussion. So let's start with clarification for the Africa Rice team. Everything was clear. Everybody wants to try your rice. Can I ask the 5 speakers to please come forward and sit here? I've just realized that it's actually a manel. Problem. It's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay.
We have all different cultures.
Yes,
At
but
least.
it's against my principle, so I don't know what to do. But yeah, I will. Maybe I will be more active as a facilitator than I had expected. Let's just me say that, so that I bring as well the gender. So oh yeah, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna maybe put it off. Maybe yeah. Questions will be mainly from women. Yes, absolutely. We have to find a way to get the gender balance right. I'm the facilitator, so I'm sorry that, yeah. So let's first clap for those 5 great presentations. Sorry, yeah. Okay, so general discussions about, I think, how we can better organize, articulate, get more value of the CGIAR in terms of value chains work, right? And so, and scaling work that came very strongly. So here is your chance. There's a very 5 eminent person here. And I saw a lady here raising her hand, and I said preference to women for now, since we have a manel. Go ahead. Please just say your name and where you come from. Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Magali Garcia. I come from Bolivia, South America. And yeah, especially for, I don't remember your name. Yes, Alan. You know, we have the same problems in the Andes, and farmers have, we not know a lot of producers and consumers, but what about the intermediate thing? And we know that they take all the share or most of the share of the income. But on the other hand, well, there is no enough research. Do you think that it's necessary to reduce the number or the power of these intermediates, because they are necessary or not? Because there are some policies to approach farmers to consumers, but it's very...
Yes. No, it's actually, it's my fault. I should have asked you to use the mic there. So let's take a couple of questions. Wow. From no questions earlier. You know, it's funny. I say more women and I have more. So let me take one more woman and one man. This gentleman has been trying. I think you were first, and then I take you. So first you, and then the gentleman.
Okay. Thank you so much about the presentation of African rice. Yes, I know we have a challenge of food, but I'm wondering, you are presenting the parboiled rice. How can a local woman be able to access that rice? Because I have tried to access it in the Nairobi supermarkets, but it is expensive, and yet I'm a working class. So how can that local woman be able to access the rice?
Great question. Just put your mic off. That gentleman there, yeah, please, then go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Very nice presentation, all the presenters. It's on now, yeah. So I have 2 questions to the presenters and 1 comment. First question to Mr. Chaugan. It's excellent presentation. You are doing work on agriculture machinery, agribusiness development, processing, everything. But I feel like it's more concentrated in India. Of course, ICRISAT has a mandate to work in Africa as well. What is happening in Africa? What kind of work you are doing in African continent? My second question goes to Dr. Alain. Excellent work again on improved descriptive work on policies and things like that. but what is the strategy mechanisms you have to really talk to the policymakers to make positive change in the countries? So do you have this strategy, or it is not the mandate of IFPRI? And the third one is my comment to Dr. Prem. You mentioned that we all need to eat parboiled rice. Still we parboil and mill the rice. Still we lose some nutrients. We feed the chicken, but the end we also eat the chicken.
Yes.
So, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So quick answers to those good questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let me go ahead. Thanks for the two questions. So for the question about how should we have fewer actors in value chains or fewer steps, I guess is another way to think about it. I think it depends a lot on the product value chains are very, very different depending upon where you're talking about and what value chain you're talking about. One thing that I've realized, one thing that some of that data I was showing you, we were finding very, very low returns to trading actually. And really there was, which means that if you from an economic perspective, the trading is efficient. Now that's essentially where I'm talking about the transaction costs and lowering transaction costs. If you lower transaction costs, you can get, the costs down within the value chain. A second thing to note is that there are value chains where you have something that people might call an apex buyer. So somebody who buys up all of the product in a specific market. A great example is in spices. I think the McCormick company buys 80% of spices in the world for a lot of different spices. So the thing is that now the McCormick company, they actually have a lot of incentive to invest in those chains, because if they invest in those chains, they're going to make more money. And so the farmers then also make more money. Whereas when you have these very competitive chains, and this is terrible to talk to a policymaker about, I'll get to the policy question, because basically what you're saying is, well, actually, if you had some monopolies here, maybe things would work better. I'm not saying that completely, but I think it's going to depend a lot on the situation and the chain, whether and I think that's where we need the analysis and the research to understand quite well what the best and the data. We need the data as well to understand what works best. Thank you for the question on policy. I have one of the things we're really focusing on in Better Diets for Nutrition, but also in the policy program, is to make sure that the types of research we are doing focuses on the food systems transformation national action plans in the countries. So every country, not every country, the US isn't participating, but many countries have food systems transformation national action plans. And those plans they're vague sometimes, but they have a lot of things that the governments have specified that they want to see done to improve the value chains, consumption and production in their countries. Well, that gives us, we are going to make sure in the next 5 years that our research is linking to those plans so that when we bring it to policymakers, they've already effectively demanded it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you had lots of questions from, yeah, thanks.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to actually emphasize the work which we are doing in Africa. And we are committed to for our work in Africa as well. In my slide, if you remember the first slide, the very second slide was the kind of work which we have done in the past in Africa around agribusiness and innovation. And we are actually committed. This morning we released our Africa strategy. So maybe I would like to share, if I will share you the copy of that. So it will give you much more clearer picture like what ICRISAT is committed to do the work in Africa as well. We have been having a series of mission workshops in last 15 days in a couple of countries where we are going to implement the same thing on a large scale level at a countrywide level. We are committed to do the same thing in almost more than 12 countries here in Africa. We have been heavily deploying our resources now in Africa for our commitment on that front. I have Dr. Victor with me, who was based in India. Now he has recently relocated to Nigeria. So this shows our commitment, like what we want to do. We're going to increase our workforce both in our regional offices here in Africa as well. This morning also we had a discussion with one of our consulate to focusing on how to bring in those technologies which we have to extend our support to MSMEs and other small and marginal enterprises, so that we can support them with the right kind of technology to help in the value addition and increase the profitability of the smallholder and marginal farmers here. We are very soon going to come up with a full-fledged platform at various places. Kenya is going to be one of them. So just wait and watch. Give us some time to showcase, right? So we are very much committed on that front as well. We have been in process of implementing some of these programs in countries like Malawi and Mali and all those places as well. We're going to incorporate like school feeding program, which has been successfully implemented in India. We are going to do that here in Africa as well. I would request Dr. Victor if he can utilize this opportunity to comment, like what is our plan in ICRISAT in Africa region. Over to you, Dr. Victor. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dinesh, and thanks to Chair. So I'll just, in the interest of time, just add this thing. So in the projects that Dinesh showed, these were mostly in project mode. Now, of course, the challenge here is the sustainability once the project runs out. So what we have in plan now is not to come in the form of a project, but establish these with existing systems, private sector, and so that we can get this institutionalized, so that beyond projects, we can still get them done. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, ICRISAT team. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Parboiled rice and why it's so expensive. Couple of things. I wish I had a simple answer, but first of all, you know, when something is new and innovative, it's very expensive. It's only when the demand increases and there is increased competition, etc., the system settles, things become cheaper. That's the first thing. The other thing is the African continent really faces competition from cheap rice. So the first time when I went to the supermarket in Bouaké, I was amazed. It was just rice from Vietnam, Thailand, I don't know where, all this rice was sitting there. And those are being imported at a relatively low cost. So that is a serious problem also if we want to compete. It means that the productivity of the system should go up. So the yields that I'm talked about from 2 to 4 or 5 tons is really essential. Like I said, production rice volumes increased because we took more land into cultivation rather than increasing the productivity. So it means that from the productivity side, we really need to push that up to become competitive as well. And then, of course, this parboiling, for instance, like I said, it's a methodology that women group are using. These are big pots of like 400 kilograms, etc. So we should also stimulate adoption of those technologies. And certainly in Kenya, if you want to push for that, we would be most welcome. We can share knowledge and technologies, etc., and to make those things happen. So we will need to partner with NARS, with NGOs who are willing to push forward these kind of techniques and technologies. So that ultimately should make it cheaper. But it will take, you know, working along this value chain on different aspects. And also in terms of competition, you might want to discuss with the governments like, hey, do you really want to have, you know, I think it's a bit tricky to talk about import tax nowadays, but but for instance, you can think of, you know, trying to have some import taxes to try to give the space to the African rice to grow and develop in economic terms. So it's a whole package that needs to be done. We should also educate the consumer because it's a higher nutritional value crop. So you don't need to buy, let's say, an additional apple or something, so to speak. That's not what it is. You should continue to buy fruits, but that's the added value that is also being paid for.
Thank you. I think James wants to add something. Then we take another round of questions. And I know I have already my 3 persons here.
Yeah, I wanted to respond about the intermediaries and whether we want to keep them or not. I think from where we sit, when you look at a market system, you want to understand the incentives, the capacity of those intermediaries. Why are they doing the things they're doing? So that you focus more of your research and intervention on modifying the behavior of these guys to make them more inclusive of the people that you are targeting. A lot of the work that we do, we are slowly shifting away of going directly to work with the farmers, but to identify those intermediaries that you can work with, changing their behaviors and modifying incentives for them to be more inclusive of the people that we are trying to reach. So the market systems innovation should be able to change their behavior by creating incentives or enhancing the capacity of the people they interact with, the farmers, to be viable business partners to them. So that, because there are people who are operating in that space and making a living out of it, but also playing some very critical roles that if they are not there, the system breaks down. So it's about modifying incentives and changing behaviors and making them more inclusive with the target group that we are targeting.
Great, thanks. So we just take another round of questions. But before that, I wanted to warn the panel that at the end of, just before we end, just think about your one idea that you would like to put forward on how to better organize value chain research within the CGIAR. Of course, your 5 presentation was very much focused on your own center, right? Now we really try to go beyond the famous one CGIAR. We have new programs. We try to integrate. Just think through that and how possibly you 5 now you are here, how you could actually support that that process this year. So yes, go ahead. Just use that mic. So this lady, you as well. I think you wanted to, and then Susan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. You can hear me? Okay, thank you very much. My name is Habiba. Thank you. My name is Habiba Somi from Kenya. I have 2 questions. So my first question goes to James.
Can you hear her? Okay.
What targeted interventions do you have, or are you doing, or do you plan for? What targeted interventions do you plan to have an outreach to the farmers or the pastoralists in the Asal area? Particularly, case in point, I'll talk about Tana River, because we have our farmers down there really battle with, that is a flood prone area. So you find like most of our farmers battle with things like livestock diseases, livestock sources. So what are you doing to ensure food security in the area and the eradication of poverty? My second question goes to Prem. Rice policy. I'm very much interested in rice because where I come from, we do a lot of rice. That's Tana Delta. So when you're coming up with the policies, so do you involve the players, the farmers? Because from my experiences, most of the policies that people come up with, we don't involve the players, the real players, and you find that at the end of the day, you find policies that don't work for them. And what strategies or methods do you have in mind to involve the farmers? Taking in mind that each market is unique. Kenyan market, the Tana Delta, Tana River down there, it's a unique market from maybe Nepal, India. So what strategies do you have around that?
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My question goes to the presenter on value chain. I remember he talked about the word sustainability, and I want to embrace the word rather than discard it, because for sustainability and growth of any intervention, the issue of value chain is critical. So when you talk of value chain, there is a relationship between value chain and sustainability of any intervention. But over the period and with practical experience, I've seen that government in Africa particularly may always want to provide for maybe input, subsidy for input, like loans and all this support for farmers. And looking at your presentation, you talked about development of inclusive business model. You talk about strengthening of private sector partnership, about policy and regulatory support, and also capacity building. Yes, these are very important. But how do we navigate the issue of the rural infrastructure? Because in some instances, you can even have primary processing at that level before getting into the secondary processing of product. But the aspect of rural infrastructure, from water to road to energy, electricity, and so on, how do we navigate that? Because there is no way we want to go about that if we are doing market-focused value chain in your program. Thank you.
Okay, that's a great question about rural infrastructure. Yeah, last question for this Ron. Thank you.
Thank you. I start with Ellen. So Ellen, you mentioned that the food value chains are very important for attaining the sustainable healthy diets. So what is happening whenever we are trying to support and progress on all these food value chains? The value chains are becoming longer value chains, and the smaller value chains for local, so-called, as you said, nutritious, sustainable, local food system product have become non-functional. And in that process, a lot of people who were producing these local foods have also been vanished, have gone out of the food system. So how do we really, what kind of research you will suggest, that how do we really restore and make this local food production viable for the people, so that it can become part of the food system for sustainable diets? And another point I just want to make, I don't know, is maybe others also. Midstream sector you already mentioned, and James also mentioned. Now, all policies, all research have been focused on farmers or the other side, on the top side, but midstream sector, of course, not. And now the risk in the value chains is increasing continuously with climate change and market and all that, and all risk is being transferred to the farmers by this midstream sector if we don't really. So how, again, this is another area of research. How do you really, what is your thinking on that? How do we really mainstream that kind of research which helps us? Thanks.
Okay, who wants to start? Maybe, yeah. Who has the mic? Oh, James. Okay.
So coming to the concern which you raised around, like how we have to address the issue of like infrastructure and support, both in terms of setting up a primary processing center and then subsequently to set up a secondary processing center, especially in case of regions where infrastructure is not there and there is not power and connectivity or supply chain broken. So how to do that, right? So I think, as I mentioned, that there has to be a very strong public-private partnership kind of a thing. There has to be a strong commitment on policy related also, because until unless there is a support to smallholder farmers in terms of various conducive for policies, it will be difficult to do that. And as Dr. Victor also mentioned about the sustainability of these kind of programs. So even if we go and do a donor supported program, what we have observed that if it has not been done proper hand holding and proper capacity building, the moment once the implementation agency is out of the program, let's say after 3 years or 4 years, then the program doesn't grow, right? So couple of areas where I think are critical is like financial support. There has to be certain policy intervention, financial inclusion and financial support to the farmers who are willing to set up these enterprises is very important and critical, because without those support they cannot establish themselves as an enterprise. So we have to develop a model. There have been a lot of successful case studies in various parts of the world where financial inclusion and support has helped in building those communities, right? For example, if I tell you one classic example, like how we are doing it in India is, like we have policies around formation of farmer producer organization now, and we have, like, government has committed a lot of financial commitment and policy level commitment to come up with almost 10,000 farmer producer organizations, right? Can you imagine the magnitude of 10,000 farmer producer organization? I think we have already established and registered more than 5,000 plus farm producer organizations, somewhere 7,500 or something are already, or FPOs are already there in place. Each FPO will be having somewhere at the minimum of 500 to a maximum of, let's say, 10,000 farmers as well. There are things. We have seen a lot of these farmer producer organizations who have become very big enterprises as well. So there are those kind of success stories as well. They have traveled their journey and they have become so big that thousands of farmers are part of that collective. Like, for example, if I give an example of, let's say, milk revolution in India. So if you can go and study the Amul cooperative model, which revolutionized the whole milk value chain, right? So that is a classic example how we can establish these cooperatives. Similarly, we have another entity in India, like which is most often cited, is like Sahyadri Farms. So they have been able to create a farmer producer organization which has been focusing on grapes, right? And a lot of other value-added, high-value horticultural crops. And their size is so big now, even they have got investments, right? So those are some of the success stories which I'm telling. And I think that, and then there are policies like Agri-Infra Fund in India. So what is Agri-Infra Fund policy level? Is like, if you want to set up an enterprise, you can get an extent of subsidies to as much as 70 to 80%. Similarly, there is Prime Minister Food Processing Scheme, PMFME. There again, you can have a subsidy of to the extent of 70% if anybody wants to set up a food processing enterprise. So these kind of policy level interventions at various level is required to support. Also, coming to your infrastructure thing, just a second.
Yeah, let's,
right.
okay,
So
let's
low cost farm machinery, which are green, maybe solar driven, so that it is independent of power supplies and all those things. Right. So we have, everything has to come together, right, to make it ecosystem.
That's right. So James, and then yeah. Yes. Okay.
So I'll be brief, especially very specific to a question about working in pastoralist areas, in Tana Delta particularly. I know we have some other projects that are more technology based, and some of them cover Tana Delta, but a lot of these projects that we have are more technology driven. But I want to explain that if you don't have a market pool for investment, then even the technology that you're trying to promote will not make any headway. So we must be able to understand what is actually preventing farmers in the pastoral areas or the livestock keepers from participating in lucrative markets, or what is preventing those large traders from sourcing from these farmers, so that we address that through innovations and through technology. So you go to the core function of the market and understand, why are they not participating in the market? Is it an issue of access to technology? Is it capacity, or is it incentive? Then you work on that to enable them. Then they can say, okay, now I have a market, but I don't have the animal health service. And then you work on working with the actors in that space to embed these services, including advisory, animal health, and feed services, so that it becomes more holistic. So you start with the core market and try to understand incentives and limitations and address them backward. Thank you.
Thanks, James. I'm going to apologize. I have to go after this answer because I need to be at the Better Diets for Nutrition launch, which is starting in 10 minutes. Two things. One is, I didn't mean to totally bash the word sustainability. What I meant by that was that there are too many definitions of sustainability. We can talk about fiscal sustainability. We can talk about environmental sustainability. We can talk about resource use sustainability. And there are lots of other definitions of sustainability. So I don't like the word because there are so many definitions. And if you just say the word sustainability, nobody knows exactly which one you're talking about. So that's what I meant more than anything. On Shalander's question on risk, I'm going to kick the one on local foods, but the one on risk, that I mean that by that's part of the finance. We need to spread the risk around the system through finance. And thank you very much.
I need half minute of your time
because
I need you. You see, to answer your questions and also on the parboiling pricing. Yeah, I need this man because he works on policies and on better nutrition and diet. So we should think together how we can, for instance, create the conditions for parboiled rice, or how to create the conditions to recommend to governments so that, we embrace these kinds of techniques and technologies. I will need this man
because I would like to see how I can use his payment for environmental services, although the payments may be low, as like a foundation in our smart valleys, because it's a very biodiverse system. We may have carbon sequestration, etc. So I think, answering your question, to think across the CGs, I think in our systems, we must work together, and the CG as a collective has a lot to offer. I'm not directly answering your question on the farmers, but you can imagine that the policies can be geared, towards import taxes, towards stimulating millers, towards stimulating farmer organizations, women groups. So you can think of a range of policies and mechanisms to stimulate, in this case, rice self-sufficiency and nutritional quality.
Yeah, and just quickly on the financial opportunities, and I think we should not ignore the power of repurposing subsidies. And then we have seen some great work happening here in Africa specifically, in which that's work going on in Malawi, in which they are trying to repurpose synthetic nitrogen fertilizer subsidies to actually support the adoption of regenerative practices or conservative practices that will support fertilizers to perform. Because if you apply fertilizer in a land that doesn't have the practices or the right practice or the right soil conditions, the fertilizer will not perform. So we'll waste money and time. So better that you support farmers to adopt practices that will create soil conditions for fertilizers and other inputs to perform. That's an example. But again, let's not ignore the power of repurposing subsidies to support the implementation of all these practices.
Let's clap for our 4+1/2 panelists. And just as a way of ending this conversation, thank you very much. What I would ask you is, if you are a CGIAR researcher, you work on a specific topic, just think about the science program where you could actually connect with. Maybe you are on livestock, me and James, and you want to work on something about policy or nutrition. Let's just try to reach out to the relevant science program. Let's not only think about our own, the program that we are most familiar with. Let's just see where there's expertise elsewhere in the CGIAR, so that you actually co-create things together. I think it's much more powerful than if we stay on our own. So as well, same thing as we've heard here, let's just not stay in our centers. If we think that expertise elsewhere, let's try to make those connections first, as scientist to scientist. Then we see how we fund it. But first, let's get the science together. And I think this is how we could really move forward better as a CGIAR. Thank you very much. It was, I think, a good session. We heard about science in the CG, and I hope you had a chance to exchange ideas. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Good.
You okay? Yeah. We missed you yesterday.
Oh, yesterday.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Anyway, we actually, we made so many people from the different area of work anyway, so we kept it.
I just wanted to draw the close. Like in other programs, like I'm involved in sustainable farming, and escapes. So there is no kind of interaction much, so you can talk to on the policy program.
You mean within the policy program?
For the policy.
So I think it's a lot of decisions are at area of work level. Are you involved in it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the way we are doing right now is really to empower the area of work to close to their own team rather than having.
But then at program level also you are discussing any kind or plans?
So at the program level, what we are doing, we are meeting often, but what you call the transition management. So the area of work needs and police and implementation. And then the idea that the area of work needs then kind of discussed within the area of work.
Just like, for example, some of the people, some centers are represented in what area of feed and poly, and some are not.